Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And this is the show where we are talking on friendship and we pick a movie that's Hallmark or Hallmark adjacent. And we talk about it from the perspective of friendship and other relationships. And it's going to be super fun because today we're getting a little trippy, getting a little existential. And we're talking about 1998's underrated romantic comedy film, in my opinion, at least, is Sliding Doors that we're talking about. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Alysa Lucas is here.
Hi.
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there.
That's good.
I'm excited about talking about relationships and friendship after getting back from a trip to see Anne at Green Gables and Prince Edward Island. So let's do it.
Yes. This is a movie that like I said, I felt for a long time was underrated. I think that it has kind of something to say. And I think because Gwyneth Paltrow became such a, kind of a polarizing figure with Goop and everything like that it kind of caused everybody to sort of, not everybody, but a lot of people to sort of dismiss everything she's in. And she can be a good actress. I mean, she's Academy Award winner.
Shakespeare in Love.
Yeah.
And of course the classic thriller mystery Seven, which her role is interesting.
I didn't even know she was in that. I've never seen it.
Oh, you've never seen it? Oh,
no.
There's a classic line in it. It's actually really dark and disturbing. So we don't have to go into
what's in the box, right?
Yes, it's what's in the box. When I got my new television, the instructions said, "What's in the box?" And then it had like a list of all the things that was going to be in the box. And I just cackled for like 10 minutes because if you know, you know. And if you don't know and you don't like disturbing movies, then please don't do it. I actually saw it on a first date in high school. And it was not a good first date movie, okay? It's like a
Is that why there was
killer.
no second date?
No, our second date was to Copycat, the other serial killer movie that came out around the same time. So, if you're wondering, why wasn't she ever into Hallmark? Again, Lifetime, serial killers. He was my
cautionary tale
high school boyfriend. Well, he ended up being my boyfriend for a little less than a year, but in high school, so.
Yeah. That's funny. That's really funny.
I didn't know I'd be sharing that today, but everyone enjoyed that.
Young love. But in this movie is like slightly based, like the concept. There was a film called Blind Chance, which is a Polish film by, and I'm going to butcher his name and I apologize, but there's a Polish famous director named Krzysztof Kieslowski.
That's probably pretty close.
I hope so. I don't know.
It sounds right. But we apologize if not.
He's really famous for a trilogy of movies called the Colors trilogy. And and there's a movie called Red, a movie called Blue, and a movie called White. And I reviewed them for Blind Spot, I think in 2020. And they are they're good movies, except for I don't like White. White wasn't good. It was trying to be like funny, and it just did not work for me really at all.
But the other two are worth seeing. They're worth seeing. Okay.
Blue and red are good. White is garbage.
Interesting. Red, white, and blue.
Yeah, I think that was because of the French flag.
Oh, yeah. That makes
why
sense.
He's in. Yeah. Anyway, so he's an interesting director. He and the idea of the red, white, and blue movies is that they're all happening at the same time.
And so like
you'll see, if you're watching Red, you might see the characters from Blue walk by or come up to the counter and say something. So all these events are all happening at the same time, but none of the people really know each other until the very end. With Red, it's actually blue, white, red. And then at Red, they all kind of finally are all on this boat together.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept. Like you really have to be mindful of the story you're telling and how you're going to incorporate and like less complicated, but sometimes similar. Yeah. Have you ever seen it? We should actually do this movie for the podcast. Playing by Heart. Have you ever seen that with Angelina Jolie, Jon Stewart's in it,
I haven't
Gillian
seen it.
Anderson? Well, I won't spoil it because I think it's a romantic. I think it would be a great movie to do, but the people are interconnected and you don't know it, and so like,
Okay, yeah.
but it's it kind of reminds me. Maybe it's the Americanized version, or well, I guess Sliding Doors is.
Yeah. Well, and so for Blind Chance, there's 3 stories that are told, and this was made in 1987, so
Mhm.
it's still sort of Cold War, Soviet.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
The main difference in all 3 lives is that he chooses to be a member of the Communist Party.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
And into things like they kind of all end badly, but
Real uppers, then, is what you're
yeah,
saying.
the the 3 different lives as opposed to this, the subway
Yeah.
in Blind Chance, it's a does he choose to be a communist or not? That's the big
Well, this I think is a little bit
difference.
more agreeable to audiences, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't know if I would recommend for the average Hallmark person to watch Blind Chance, but
Yeah,
it is the criterion if
we have a list though, so no Seven, no Blind Chance. Stick with the movies we watch. We'll help you out.
I mean, I
Rachel
guess
knows.
the question about this movie though, so 'cause of course we have Gwyneth Paltrow's character Helen. In one
Hmm.
case, she makes the subway. In the other case, she doesn't make the subway. But the
Oof.
question is either story interesting on its own? If there wasn't this thing capturing it together, because this is a criticism I heard a lot when I was going
Mm.
through the critiques of the day, that neither story by itself is compelling
Oh,
enough to stand on its own as its own movie. What do you think about that?
I think that's an interesting critique. And for me, like the first thing I start thinking about knowing I'm going to be watching this movie is what would happen in life if we made a different decision? Something small that can lead
Mhm.
to these big changes. And I think that each movie, if each story on its own, whether she made the subway or not, is for me an interesting relationship story, maybe a little bit too common and realistic for people to enjoy. So having the sliding door aspect of it, I think does make it a more compelling story. But if
Mhm.
you think about, you got one story where it's like your partner's cheating on you and you don't know it kind of thing, and then you have another one where you find out and then you sort of change your life. And I think those are things that do happen, but like on their own might be the first one for sure is a lot more depressing, right?
Yeah. The, uh the, uh the Makes the Subway
Yes.
storyline is way better than the Not
Yes.
Make the Subway storyline.
I feel terrible for Helen and both
Yeah.
of them, but definitely in the first story
Yeah.
when
The
she doesn't know.
brown-haired Helen has a way worse time.
Yeah, well, we could
I
say
can
Helen
agree.
versus Gwyneth because Helen had this long brown hair, kind of mousy brown, if you don't mind me saying so. And then you have the classic short blonde Gwyneth Paltrow
Yeah.
cut,
But
a Helen.
I also think it's kind of an unfair question because I think the sort of parallels of both of the stories are kind of needed, and it sort of
Hmm.
gets your brain going so that you need both for it to make it special. I do
Yeah.
think individually, I think that John Hannah is charming enough and sweet enough that I could be fine with
Is
blonde
he
haired
James?
Helen. Yes.
Okay,
And
James is
I could be
acceptable.
fine just watching a movie about blonde haired Helen.
Yeah.
But I think the contrast between the two is what makes it kind of special and fun.
Yeah. And also, it it makes me think like, okay, so if I did make the subway, what would my life be like if I did make the subway, right? Like there's lots of
Yeah.
different ways, and there's probably always been a time in our life when we've had that question. If we watch like the butterfly effect with Ashton Kutcher, which is where like things slightly change based on decisions made. And I think that's something we think about because when things don't go our way, there's that experience of regret, right? So I think inherently humane person is going to think about these changes that we make, and so I think it's absolutely needed for I think it's an interesting story to tell,
Yeah.
because I think what we also do is get a comparison, and we can see that Helen's life is a whole lot better in one of these stories than the
Yeah.
other.
Really, I mean, her life is so much better if she makes the subway than if
Yeah,
she doesn't.
and despite, partner cheating, like, it's probably better to know sooner and to get out of there and figure out what you're going to do with your life and move on, versus like
Mhm.
not knowing and working all hours of the day to support, quote unquote, these are air quotes, a novelist
Yeah.
boyfriend. It's just like, ugh, it's
Yeah.
infuriating. So like, if Helen could reflect on her life, she'd be like, I want to be blonde Helen.
Which it is
And
surprising that they, not to jump ahead to the ending, but it is kind of
yeah,
surprising they end with Brown Helen.
yeah, I actually like the ending. I was like, oh, we're choosing violence. Okay. I was like, whoa. And I swear I saw this in the theater. Or maybe we had it because I worked at a movie theater when it came out. So maybe I saw bits and pieces, but I swear I saw this. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, Helen is having a violent time. And I was like, this is not okay.
Because his Helen has just died, basically.
Yeah.
And he comes down and they end up in the lift together, the
Yeah.
elevator together, and with Brown Helen. And
Yeah.
and he picks up her earring, and obviously that's supposed to be sort of our ending, that they find each other in the end. Love
So
wins in the
is it
end.
so is it
But
supposed to say then that brown haired Helen, who has gone through losing her job, I mean, maybe
mhm.
we're getting ahead of ourselves, so you let me know, Rachel.
Well,
But
I mean, it just
I mean,
is
it's sort
happening.
of the nature of the story, right?
Yeah, so in the end, it is the brown-haired Helen is the one that wins the day. That's the one that is actually real, I guess, is actually.
So are they saying that we have to go through more trauma
I don't know, I
to
don't know.
get
Well,
to the
let's
good
talk it out,
stuff?
let's talk it out,
Okay.
and maybe we'll figure it out as we go. Well, I think the only way to do this is to talk about them separately. It'd be
Yeah.
too confusing. So I have, blonde-haired Helen. So we're gonna talk about, and then I have brown haired Helen, and we'll talk
Okay.
about blonde haired first. So
Okay.
they both start with, she gets fired for stealing the booze from her PR clinic, which
It
was
seems
really
like
stupid of hers. But
yeah.
why does her? I don't understand why her PR place has like loads of booze
And
around.
also, like, she sort of indicated when she was getting fired that they had wanted her out for a long time. So it was like an easy thing where maybe that normally wouldn't have happened to people. They might have just
Yeah,
been replaced the booze, you know.
yeah. And I mean, evidently she's working for like the Wolf of Wall Street or something like that. I don't know.
Oh,
Like
I would have loved
tons
Leonardo
of booze and
DiCaprio in this
parties.
movie. That would have
Yeah.
been great.
But she drops her earring, and John Hannah James, he helps her, and they have their, I guess, kind of meet cute.
Yeah.
And she makes the subway, and she sits next to him again, John Hannah, and he says, everyone knows the Beatles lyrics subconsciously from the womb. And then he also says that confined spaces, everyone shuts down. Perhaps everyone on the lift is a psychopath. And she says, I don't think you're a psychopath.
But she's also
But
like, I've just been fired and I'm on the subway, so leave me alone. And
mhm.
he is nonstop talking. And I was thought for a moment, I was like, get up and move.
Yeah. And yeah, she's just said that, I'm just got fired and everything. And he says, I have people I consider soulmates. They don't confide in me this much. And he says, remember what the Monty Python boys say. And she says,
Yes.
always think on the bright side of life. No. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Yes.
So yes. Are you a Monty Python fan? Have you
I
seen?
know of it. I don't know enough, but I do understand enough that it's a way to indicate that, like, maybe you saying that right now, and then at the very end, brown haired Helen says it back correctly.
Uh-huh.
is it really about James then? And him
Right.
finding his soulmate? Like, I understand that would be a connector for people. Like, if
Mhm.
you get Monty Python, you get it, right?
Yeah.
So I
And
know enough of that, but I don't know enough about it to be
it
able to be in on it.
especially Monty Python and the Holy Grail, I think it's gotta be one of the most quoted movies ever made. I
Mhm.
mean, you just go around and everybody has a Monty Python and the Holy Grail kind of quoted, as far as amongst movie fans, at least. I mean,
Yes.
my brother must have quoted the entire movie to me before I even saw it over and over and over again.
He's like
And the fact that I
performing it like
still
Shakespeare.
yeah, the fact that I still really enjoyed it, it's probably my favorite comedy that I've ever seen.
Oh,
It's
wow.
so funny. Yeah, it's really
Bold
good.
statement.
Yeah. It's hilarious. And so yeah, I mean, especially there's just some very, very memorable scenes. Like there's a
Mhm.
whole scene with this Black Knight who who keeps challenging Arthur and and he keeps losing limbs and he's like, "What are you, a coward?" He's like, "You're mortally wounded." Just a small scratch, and I don't know. It's ridiculous. It's just things like that that are
I love
ridiculous and
I think
funny.
my favorite part about that is not necessarily the quote, but you laughing about it.
Yeah. "You
I
coward!
love I
You
love when
afraid to fight?"
I love when people are tickled about something.
Yeah. So, it is one of my favorites. I really enjoy it. And I have if you haven't seen it, you definitely
I
should check it
haven't, so
out.
maybe I'll add it to my list. I
Mhm.
not I've been watching a lot of reality TV right now, so I'll have to like
Yeah.
rotate it in.
So, that already kind of wins him over, I think, to a lot of the audience. Like, "Oh, this guy is great. He's
Yeah,
funny,
like
he's
I get
sweet, he's
that. Yeah.
charming." Yeah.
He's pretty funny, but I also was like, maybe she should have missed the subway or the tube, excuse me. There.
Yeah.
But I was like, which one is better, making the subway or not?
Mhm.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor of the podcast.
From Jenny Martz, the USA Today best-selling author of award-winning books filled with love, laughter, and always a happily ever after, comes a sweet, funny, and heartfelt Western romance that will have you swooning.
Jenny Martz's Cowboy Ever After is a fish out of water, grumpy sunshine romance that follows a shy author from the city, her jaded cowboy host, and their journey to trust and love again over a week together on a ranch in Montana.
The perfect romance for your summer reading list, Publishers Weekly calls Cowboy Ever After a sweet tale that will have readers eager to return to this picture-perfect Montana town.
Available now on Amazon and in stores at Barnes & Noble and select bookstores.
For more information about Cowboy Ever After and other titles by Jenny Martz, visit www.jennymartz.com.
That's www.jennymartz.com or use the affiliate link in the description section below.
She gets home and she finds her boyfriend is cheating on her. And she says, "I got sacked, so did you, it would seem."
Yeah, that was a good line.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry. Can we talk about Jerry for a second?
Yeah. Let's talk about Jerry.
It's
He's
terrible.
terrible. He's
I
the
was
worst.
like, Helen, can we talk about why this is even happening?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why
What
are
does
you in
she
the relationship with him?
Yeah, I
I mean,
mean,
to each their own, but Jerry was terrible.
yeah, in both brown-haired and blonde-haired
Yes.
Helens, he's equally terrible.
Because here's the
And the
thing, he's a novelist who doesn't write his book, and that he even jokes to his friend Russell, like, of course I didn't finish my book, I'm a novelist.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, so how do you have money? Is it because of Helen? And so you have the audacity to cheat on her when she's like supplying your, I don't know, I just was like,
Yeah.
and
And
he's not even like the bad man of business that I understand from Hallmark, where you're just immediately like, ugh. Like, as soon as
he's
I saw his face, I was like, this isn't gonna be good.
he's like the squirrely man you punch in your face of business. Like,
Yeah,
he's terrible. I would rather have a bad man of business any day over him.
yeah, at least I know, like, I feel like he couldn't. So we
Because usually the bad men of business aren't actually bad. Like they just work a lot. Like they're usually not like bad
Some
people.
are a little narcissistic, perhaps, but like Jerry,
Excuse me.
If he was narcissistic, he doesn't have the ability, at least in this movie and what I saw, the ability to construct sentences and conversation that are helpful to what's happening at any given time. I
Yeah, and
feel
it does
like
feel hard to believe that both of these women would be interested in this dweeb.
Janine Triplehorn, are you kidding me? Get out of there, girl! Run!
She is terrible. I mean, she does a good job in the role,
Yeah.
but her character, Lydia, is terrible in this movie. And,
Oh yeah.
But I don't believe a character like her would
Be
really be interested in this
him.
guy.
Because I feel like she would want someone similar to herself, which is very driven, determined, mean.
Yeah.
Like, like they can each give it to each other type of thing in terms, like, I just feel like he is in a way, like
what are these women seeing in Jerry?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's not like he's a supermodel, like super handsome.
He reminded me of a British version of David Schwimmer / Ross Geller from Friends.
Yeah,
and it really bothered me. The divorcer!
He's like fine. He's like normal, looking or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, to tempt these women to go through this horrible experience, I just don't quite get it on that level. So then what is he intellectually stimulating? It doesn't seem like it.
But he's not.
No.
And that's the thing is, like, I feel like this character, like, I guess some of the words I would think of is doormat, coward. Like, he talks a big game with his friend Russell, and the only scenes we ever see of Jerry and Russell are in the bar. So apparently Russell just lives at the bar.
Right, yeah.
And so it's him coming in and talking about what's going
Doesn't
on,
he
and
work
Russell
there?
laughing at him. He might, but he's always drinking beer, and I didn't think, like,
Oh,
when you
yeah.
work at a bar, you should be drinking it. What do I know? But I just feel like he talks up this big game, like, that he doesn't seem confident. He doesn't seem like he can stand up for himself or other people. He doesn't have a moral code. Like, I don't know. Like, there's nothing endearing about him at all. Like,
But
at any point.
Sometimes you watch these people in real life, though, that have, like, a love triangle and have, like, lots of women, and you're like,
how?
Like, I watched that. I used to watch that show, the Sister Wife show on TLC.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this guy got 3 women.
Yeah, the women seemed great. I was like, ladies, let's get it together. Because, like, yeah, like, I just, and maybe that comes to maybe that comes to the societal level or cultural like, just thinking about how, our society is very much about, like, when it comes to relationships, that we should be in a romantic relationship, we should get married, and we should have kids. And so it just felt like no one was going for what they want. It's like settling. I don't really know. It bothered me. Like, I need to know the person who wrote this character, like, why? Like, is it supposed to be a combination of terrible traits of all sorts of men? Is it supposed to be like we're supposed to question her life? Like,
I do think Ross Geller is a pretty good comparison, though. I do.
But at least Ross had paleontology, and that was exciting, at least.
Because Ross keeps getting all of these women, too, to marry him.
Yeah, the divorcer.
What?
I just, like, I was almost surprised in a way, because I know there's, like, tropes and movies and things like that. Did you feel like his character reflected something that we've seen before? Like, I felt like, I don't know, he was like, so you were on my podcast, Best Forevers, to talk about Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You know who he reminded me? Jerry reminded me of the host at that French restaurant. Just, like, gross, terrible, weird. Like, what? And
No, but I actually think that Ross Geller's a great comparison because he's kind of mousy and a little bit annoying and
yeah,
yeah, but the
I
girls seem
just
to
I felt like
love
he still
him. I
had
mean,
maybe a little bit more going for him, but I'm not sure. Like
with
I think in his case, his first wife is a lesbian, so like that maybe created some sort of difficulties for him
yeah,
in moving forward. I can understand that. I just
but
I
then with
can't think
Emily,
of
that was
another
bad.
character. Yeah, Emily was terrible too. Okay. I just I don't know how to talk about this guy because I am not used to seeing guys like him in
Yeah,
media. Like I watch a
I
lot of media. I watch so much media and this was
this is not a very Hallmark friendly comment, but I kind of wonder is he like super good in the sack? Is that why these women just love him?
perhaps, but
I
even
mean, that seems to be the
Helen,
main appeal of Jean Triple of Lydia.
yeah,
Seems to be that seems to be the main draw.
well, yeah, because that's all when they're either mad at each other and and he's like, "Why are you calling my house? And why are you doing this?" and all this kind of stuff. And they
Yeah.
got followed to the library because Helen was suspicious. I just was like, I don't even think he wanted to be like. I'm like, does he even want to be in these relationships? Like, does he even
No.
care about Lydia or Helen? Like, that's the thing.
No.
Like, there seemed to be the only
Well, and that's
reason
what
to be
his
there was to get Helen's support. But then if
yeah,
that's the case and you don't be thrown out on your tush, then why are you cheating on her? Like
right. It
I
seemed
don't
like that was what the
understand.
barkeeper friend kept trying to tell him of like, what are you doing? These two
Yeah.
women, like, what do you want? Yeah, I don't understand Jerry as a character. I mean, he's definitely a narcissist for sure. And I feel
But
like
like
Brown
not in a way where he's like confident in himself. Like I think narcissists a lot of time have like this overconfidence,
uh-huh.
like but he doesn't have that unless he's talking to Russell.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's sort of the kind of old Woody Allen type
Oh, she did say
of
that. You don't have to
yeah,
be
it just makes
you
you go
don't have to turn into Woody Allen. I laughed for like 5 minutes.
there was that kind of
That was exactly and like that's not appealing at all.
no. No.
So like like no matter which sliding door she goes through,
Yeah.
Jerry should not be there. And I just feel like is this movie about decision making and making bad decisions about being in relationships with people who are not good for us?
hmm
I was like,
Well, yeah,
what
that's
is
the interesting
happening?
question is because so in the end, she ends up in the course of this movie, she ends up with James one way or another
Yeah.
on both sides. That's kind of a happy ending of it all.
But and then
Un-
I
unless,
have one slight issue with him, but we can talk about I mean, we're still on Blonde
yeah.
Helen.
So,
But
but
sorry,
yeah,
Jerry was just confusing and
because
problematic.
yeah, I mean, so we have to ask ourselves the question of like, do you think that your life changes so much depending on which subway you get on or which in? Do you think that that's really true, or do you think basically it all kinds of evens out? I mean, there's the whole many worlds theory that there's like multiple versions of basically all of
Yeah.
us all interacting all around. That there's
Well, I
I
definitely
don't know.
think
It's
that our ability to meet people, like she wouldn't have met James. I mean, she did. I guess that's the thing is
yeah,
like she had interacted with him a couple different times, right? Brown haired
yeah,
Helen. They were both met him on that elevator with the earring at the beginning, right?
yeah.
Because she hadn't missed the subway yet, right? And then
mean, I
at the
think about
end,
this all the time because I do think there are like big things that seem to be like linchpins in people's lives. Like,
well, like think
for
about this.
example,
Yes.
when I was 17, my parents moved from Maryland to California. So I
Yeah.
graduated a year early, basically from high school.
Oh,
And
you a high IQ kid, I guess,
yeah,
huh?
one of those types. Right. But but
Smarty
because I
pants.
did that, I ended up going to community college for my
Mhm.
senior instead of I would have not been as academic, let's put it that way,
Yeah.
if I was in if I was in Maryland. and I got all A's. And so that was what allowed me to get into BYU because
Mhm.
I didn't have a very good ACT score. So I needed
Ugh.
those A's in college in order to get in, I think. So I got in, I started going to BYU in the summer of that year. My sister decides to go with me. She graduated super early at 16.
Mhm. Oh,
She was
wow.
homeschool. I know.
Mhm.
And so she starts going. She meets her that summer semester, she meets Seth, who ends up becoming her husband. And
Mhm.
if I hadn't gone away to college when I did, she would not have gone with me. She would not have met him.
Yeah.
And everything would be different. If my parents had not moved, I don't think I would have gotten into BYU. And if I had gotten into BYU, my sister definitely wouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I do think there's those things that like seems like a little thing, like move from Maryland to
Well,
California
I mean,
when
moves
I was
are big
17.
transitions. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
moves, I think geographically, it changes the people that are going to be in your
Mm-hmm.
life and the opportunities you're going to have. And so, I
Mm-hmm.
guess if I take your example and take one from my life, is that what if I didn't go to get my PhD? I wouldn't have my best friend who
Yeah.
I just went on the trip with to Prince Edward Island. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be at Central Michigan University. I wouldn't be think about all the students I wouldn't have interacted with. Like, what would I be doing in my life? Would I still be married to the
Yeah.
guy I saw seven a copycat? Like, would we have gotten married and had kids? I don't have kids. I'm not married. So I do think that the bigger decisions in our life or the bigger changes definitely do, I think, have an impact. And that
Yeah.
had I not gone to community college and I went to, a 4-year university, like I never lived in the residence halls, right? Because I went to
Mm-hmm.
community college. Well, I just see like friends from high school went to college and they have like their best friends are from the people who lived across the hall from them, like, right,
Right.
and so I do think large changes do. And so that's why I keep coming back to, is this about decision making? Like, is this commentary about decisions?
Mm-hmm.
Not that, okay, she missed the subway because that little girl with her Barbie or whatever, like, get out of the way, kid.
Yeah, because I think it's really more about, you're right, it's more about the decisions we make versus fate. It makes it
Yeah.
seem like it's about fate, but like there were so many clues along the way for brown haired Helen that she should have made a different
Get it
decision.
together. Yeah, like, you were with Jerry for 2.5 years, but why?
Yeah.
Do
And like
you hate
him
yourself?
screaming in the like because he sees Lydia in the window, and I mean just
Yeah.
like weird things happening should have been more of a clue than they were. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing that the brandy glasses seem to be the only clue that matters to her, and I'm like, there's
Yeah.
a lot more going on here.
There's so many clues. Like, have you read anything of his novel? That would have been a clue.
Yes, I would definitely want, especially if I'm working two jobs, I would
Yeah.
want to see some of that novel.
She was working so hard. It's so infuriating
Yeah.
that he's like, well, I asked her if she wanted to go on this research trip with me, but I knew she couldn't because she has to work her 2 jobs. Ha ha ha! I'm gonna go have an affair instead of doing research and writing my book. Like, what?
Yeah, that's
Can
really,
we
really
have the
bad.
flip side where we have Jerry's story? Because I have so many questions about him, obviously. Like, if you're listening right now and you've never seen the movie, I need you to immediately watch it and let me and
Yes.
Rachel know what is up with Jerry.
So she meets James at the bar. Anna
Mhm.
finds her there, her friend, and that is a
Yes.
really nice friendship through both stories. Would you
Well, the
agree?
only thing I have is like, the only thing I will say about Anna as a friend is it's definitely one sided. Anna is giving a lot to Helen, and at the same
Yeah.
time, I have to say, but Helen is going through trauma and she's dating Jerry. So Anna's
Yeah.
stepping up for now, and another time Helen better step up for Anna.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point. That's a good point. In both worlds. We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
And I did it was funny to me in Blonde-Haired Helen when she says she's reading the horoscope and hoping he'll die. Reading his Aries horoscope. And Anna's like, what are you doing? Why are you reading that?
That was great.
We also, James says that you never make jokes about women's clothes, hair, or menstrual cycles. Would you agree?
Yes.
They're dicey territories. Let's put it that way. I would not.
I think I would add a few things perhaps to the list, but yeah, James is on the right track.
Yeah. I thought it was they had some good witty banter between James and Helen.
Yeah. Yes.
And James says, what are you doing 2 weeks on Saturday? Helen says, probably killing myself. And James says,
no.
Excellent. What time does that finish? Do you like boats? I thought they were good. And then you see James with his mom, and that he's caring for his mom, and she gets the PR job working for this restaurant, a friend of James.
Yep.
And
well, she has her own company.
Yeah.
And I think he's her first client.
Mm-hmm. And then they are on the boat, James and Blonde-Haired Helen, and they almost kiss. And he says, I'm going through a rebound too, from Pamela when he was 8, which is really charming. And then she kisses him, and they spend the night together. And he says, well, first she says, would you mind putting that down to a momentary lapse of concentration? And he says, I don't want to be confusion in your life, but something's happened since I met you.
Oh.
And that's why when he leaves a note on the pillow that says, wow, what a momentary lapse of concentration. It's really good. I didn't love the fact that when he sees her talking to Jerry outside, that he then doesn't talk to her again for weeks and weeks.
Well, because let's not bury the lead. James forgot to tell Helen a little something, didn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that, but I feel like a normal human being would just talk about and ask a simple question of what was going on with you and Jerry.
Yeah.
I mean, rather than just you've been building up this relationship and then just all of a sudden stop talking.
Yeah, don't self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Let's figure it out, And the thing is, he has no idea what they were talking about or what her reaction was, and so he was being jealous, but that doesn't mean you completely cut people off.
Yeah, you ask a couple follow-up questions.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of asking questions.
Jerry says, truth is I can't write without you. I can't do anything without you. Remember how good we are together? And it is true that we don't see that side of the relationship, that it must have started with something good. And maybe they've just kind of gotten into a rut, and that's the problem, that then leads him to, not that it's justified, but that's what leads him to having the affair. I don't know. But
I feel he is a person version of a rut.
But evidently they were great together, according to Jerry, at least.
Jerry, I mean, he's working on his novel, right? No, he's not. I don't believe anything Jerry thinks or says.
Yeah. And then we find out Lydia is late in both stories.
Scandal.
Yes. And Jerry comes back when he calls again, and then she does the 411 and finds out the number.
Yeah.
Lydia's number, find out Lydia's number, and then she puts all the pieces together,
Yeah.
and she says, I felt like I was being unfaithful to James just being there. And I liked it. This was a very 1998 comment. And he says, being with you makes the wait for the next episode of Seinfeld easier to bear. That was kind of funny.
Yeah, that one made me chuckle. I remember being in high school and I was on the newspaper staff, and I was one of the only freshmen, and every Friday morning the seniors on the staff would talk about Seinfeld, and I didn't know what they were talking about, so I had to start watching it.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a big part of the lexicon of that era.
Yeah. So
it really
that
was.
makes me chuckle. Okay, yeah.
Well, I think I maybe mentioned it in the past, but I was actually in the hospital the day of the Seinfeld finale.
Oh.
my appendix out.
Oh, I have my appendix out too, but it wasn't then.
I watched the finale of Seinfeld in the hospital. The only time I've ever been in the hospital overnight was after I had my appendix out.
Yeah, that's the same for me. And all I remember from watching television was it was like the Red Lobster shrimp-a-thon or whatever, and every other second that ad was on. And of course, after you have your appendix out, you can't eat solid food.
Right.
So I don't remember any TV except the Red Lobster commercials. Very rude is what I'll say. Super
she
rude.
runs into James and he says, I wanted to call you. I thought you still had to deal with Jerry. And if I allowed you to deal with it, you'd be able to deal with it. And so they kind of make up, and we find out his mom's in the hospital. She offers to come with him. And then we have they meet for drinks, and then she goes to his rowing practice or competition or whatever. And so we see her later on in her planner, drawing a little drawing of him rowing, which felt very
so 7th grade.
In the beginning of a relationship kind of a thing to me.
Yeah.
That you do little drawings and
your initials, AL plus. Right. Not Jerry, I'll tell you that much.
So then she goes to the hospital and she sees him there with his wife. And
that's
I do
the
think
red flag for me.
Yeah. I do think this is a pretty stupid conflict. I think anybody would just, it just feels like a reach for a conflict. And I think that if you were having this kind of situation where we were pretending to be in a relationship, I think that you would just tell the person that you're dating
that you're separated.
We're separated, but we're doing this.
Yeah, I was
I don't know.
When we first see his wife in an earlier scene dealing with his mom's health, they sort of allude to it, but I was like, is this his sister? Is it going to be one of those things where they fake us and then she's going to think that it's his wife, but it's really his sister or something? But then it was his wife, and I was like, he knows the day he met her, he knows that she was fired and that she was cheated on. And so why would you not just say, hey, I can understand some of what you're going through, perhaps, because my relationship is ending, right? It's an easy fix. It goes back to him in the restaurant watching Helen and Jerry have the conversation, and then him getting jealous and not talking to her. It's like, hey, everybody, communication is key. It might be cheesy, but it's true.
Yeah. It's definitely, this is a real rom-com kind of contrivance that you're having here.
Yes.
It allows us to get the scene in the rain with, if we aren't going to be together, make sure it's for the right reasons.
Yes.
And all this stuff. And then I do think that Gwyneth Paltrow and John Hannah have really nice chemistry together.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And especially it does help in a way the fact that she has no chemistry with Jerry. Ugh. And there's no and so it kind of adds to I think you like James even more.
Yeah.
Because Jerry is such a buffoon.
Yeah, and maybe that's where it goes back to decision making. Like, sometimes we make dumb decisions when the obvious answer is right in our face.
Right. So, in brown-haired Helen, she finds
Yes.
out that she's pregnant,
Mhm.
and she's trying to tell him about it.
Jerry, but he's off having an affair.
Yeah, and he was going to tell her, but then she falls asleep at one point.
Yeah.
And then Lydia says that maybe it's a Helen block. Maybe that's the reason why he's blocked. But I did feel for her when she stubs her toe.
That sounded
He's all
painful.
mad at her, and I'm like, oh, that's the worst when you stub your toe really bad like that.
But he's like, can you be quiet or whatever? Like, he wants her to, like, you're making so much noise when I'm on the phone. It's like, I'm sorry, stubbing your toe in a bathtub, it hurts.
Yeah, it really hurts.
And if you can control the noises that come out of you when that happens, then that's your real power, Jerry, and you are not taking advantage of it.
Well, and she says, I'm trying to win you back. I'm trying to be your girlfriend. I guess my question is, why? What does she see in this? Why would she want to be with him? I mean, she's a beautiful woman. She's confident. She could probably have any man that she wanted. I don't understand why she is bothering with this guy.
And that's
it
why
doesn't
we
make
need
sense.
a sliding doors Jerry version so we can really deal with what's happening here, because there's got to be more to him and more to the story, but we just don't have it. And the information we do have, to me, it seems like an easy decision. He shouldn't have all these problems, because he should be working 2 jobs for himself and living by himself and trying to create his book. He shouldn't be doing all this stuff. He's so annoying.
Well, we also have that it's interesting so this was 98, we see, so Helen thinks she's pregnant and she drinks while pregnant, which I don't feel like you'd ever see now. She's like, oh, I shouldn't in my position, but she does anyway.
Yeah, like, you'll see that at that time. It'll be like, just one drink, or something like that. And you're like, okay.
Because we were talking about that with Sex and the City.
Yeah.
That in our recap, that there's one episode where Carrie thinks she's pregnant and we see her drinking. And I don't feel like you would see that now.
No.
You would never see that.
Yeah.
But
times have changed.
Yeah. So then Jerry confronts Lydia, and after he sees her in the window, and she says, that I'm pregnant. And Helen thinks she has this big interview, this PR interview at the person's house. And she goes there, and it's Lydia. And
that's the part I hate about Lydia. Like, Lydia overall seems kind of mean in this movie. Like, there's one part in Brown-Haired Helen where she's delivering sandwiches as one of her jobs. And then, like, she summons her because she has to meet Jerry's girlfriend, and, like, she makes up a story about her staff getting sick off the sandwiches she ate, and she's just, like, giving it to her for, like, no particular reason other than, like, it just felt like, she just was like, there are other ways to go about this, Lydia. Like, I understand people might be in love triangles, okay? I understand these things happen. But there's got to be more ways than, like, putting her in situations that are going to be more traumatic, right? Like, it's not like Helen has done anything wrong, She's just with a partner who is cheating on her.
I mean, in Lydia, she's just like, well, I now I've seen Helen and I don't get it. I don't see it. But I don't understand. I guess I don't see what she sees in Jerry. So I don't
Lydia.
What is she doing? What is she doing?
Yeah. And I just think, like, she's, like, kicking Helen when she's down. Like, she knows she doesn't have she's working these 2 jobs, so she brings her in for a PR job just to, like, create this terrible scenario of gotcha. Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think Jerry should be able to go on without her knowing, but like that isn't the way to do it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the end of The Apartment, when Fred McMurray's secretary calls his wife and tells all because she's just been fired, the secretary, and yeah, she calls his wife and tells all the bad that he's
details.
been doing. Yeah, and I mean that's probably the better way to handle it
Yeah,
if you want to
maybe a
really.
letter, some sort of note.
Yeah. But Helen falls down the stairs, and in the blonde-haired Helen, she gets hit by a car.
Okay, yeah, what was up with this violence though, y'all? Like, seriously, like, is there a way to end it with it? Because the thing is, like, she's arguing with Jerry and she falls down the stairs. So, like, that felt really. I was like, Jerry, you're killing me. You're killing me.
I mean, it's an accident. It's not.
Yeah. But still, I was just like, come on, bro. And then with blonde-haired Helen, with James, I was like, just when they're coming back together and it's working out, and then she gets hit by a car, I was like, this is rude.
Yeah. Poor
This
Helen.
person doesn't want anyone to be happy, whoever created this.
But I do like when brown-haired Helen wakes up and sees Jerry. She's lost the baby. She wakes up and she says, I want you to stand up, walk over to the door, open it, walk through it, and close it behind you.
Bye.
That's pretty good.
See you later. And never come back.
Yeah. And when then James says goodbye to blonde-haired Helen, and he says, I'm glad you caught that train that day.
Aww.
And then meets brown-haired Helen in the elevator. So are we supposed to kind of assume that he won't really remember that, like, blonde-haired Helen didn't really happen in the world of this movie?
Oh.
Because otherwise, I mean, if your partner had just died and
then here's
you go into the
Helen.
elevator and you see someone who looks exactly like her with brown hair, you would be like really tripping out. But I think that's what it's supposed to be, that like the two versions are coming together, and now brown-haired Helen won.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
a great question.
story.
I didn't think about that. Like, wait a minute, isn't he gonna be like, they're gonna put me in the nut house?
Yeah, because I think that's it. In the ending of this movie, brown-haired Helen is Endgame.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that aside, like, okay, like the stories are coming together, so then we will assume that this will be the first time that James is meeting Helen,
right.
let's say. Okay, that aside, again, can we go back to why is brown-haired Helen's path, living on when blonde hair?
Yeah.
Because, like, I
don't know why they picked that one as the winner.
Yeah, because I'm like, so she experienced more trauma, so like now she deserves this good guy, but a woman who has a good guy doesn't deserve him? Like, what is happening?
Well, I mean, both instances she went through trauma, but one she just found out about much earlier than the other.
Yeah, so here's her timeline, brown-haired Helen, okay? She gets fired. She gets mugged. She then has to work 2 jobs that she hates while her partner is having an affair. Then she becomes pregnant by said cheating partner. And then when she thinks that she's going to have a chance at a PR job to get out of those 2 jobs.
Yeah.
She goes over for the interview, discovers that her partner is cheating on her. There's an accident. She loses the baby.
Well, I think we're supposed to assume that
she
now
finally stands up for herself, though, and is like, get out of here. And so I guess that's the moment of cheering.
I think we're supposed to assume that now she goes and does everything that blonde-haired Helen does. Like, I think she's going to start the PR firm, and but she'll now be in this, like, relationship with James.
So then, basically, we just, sometimes we're not ready and sometimes we are.
Yeah, I mean, the ending ends up being the same. That's the interesting thing about this is
Yeah,
that that's why I'm saying it's more, I think you're absolutely right about it being more about choices than about fate.
yeah,
Because the you think that, oh, this is going to be a huge change of fate because of whether
yeah,
she gets in the subway or not. But in reality, the ending is the same
yeah,
for Helen,
yeah.
um, whether she gets the
Well, I
subway or not.
do see. I think.
It
I
just takes
mean,
a little longer in one situation than the other
yeah, and so like
to get
sometimes we
James.
don't make the best decisions for ourselves, or we wait to make decisions. We'll
Mhm.
try to stick things out when really it should be like, let's make the best decision for ourselves in
Yeah.
this moment. And so sometimes we need information to make the decisions. And basically, blonde haired Helen had the information that brown haired Helen didn't, right? So it took a
Mhm.
little bit longer for her to make a more informed
Right.
decision. And
Yeah.
like, I think, this movie, I like it because it's a thinker, right?
Yeah.
Like, it has you reflecting and thinking on things. I just can't stand Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry is the worst. I do, and I really don't like Lydia either. Both of those characters are just so
Lydia,
hard
though,
to
I
watch.
feel like is a trope that a stereotype or a character or person that exists, though. Like
Mhm.
the sort of, the so bad man of business, it's the bad woman of business, basically, and she
The
knows
other
what she
woman
wants,
kind
and yeah,
of.
yeah, and just like really manipulative, and like
I
I
think they
think
just give her a little too much screen time. She's just so
yes,
much that
well, it's just
I'm really
everything
sick
she's
of her
trying to
real
do.
quick.
Like, she wants Helen to be hurt by the fact that her boyfriend is cheating. And it's like, if you really want to be with Jerry, there's got to be a different way that you can go about it without making Helen's life a living hell. Like, let's not
Yeah.
make it more
Well,
traumatic.
and
Like,
like her version of being with Jerry isn't really being with him anyway. I mean, this sort of half and half kind of thing isn't a real relationship. So,
and let's go back to Jerry's point, which is the only good thing that came out of Jerry is like, I didn't leave you, you left for America, Lydia.
right.
And then you came
Yeah.
back and now you want so I guess if we take it in along the line of this movie, that her sliding door was going to America or not?
I guess that
Because
was
so maybe
for
we need
Lydia.
Lydia's sliding door because it's like she made a decision to go to America and it ended up not being a good one, perhaps. And
Yeah.
so this is what, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about. I think my brain hurts. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can come up with Lydia's timeline right now.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. But I don't know. I think it's a fun movie. I think it helps so much that John Hannah and Gwyneth Paltrow have such nice chemistry together. He's
Yeah,
so charming that it maybe that even makes Jerry look even worse, and you become even more mad because you're just like, why he's got this in this alternate reality. She's got this other great guy, and
yeah.
yeah, he
It's
does a
just
stupid thing about the wife, but again, that was kind of a contrivance, a romantic comedy contrivance, but um, they probably didn't even need to do that because they had plenty of conflict
yeah.
anyway in the story. But anyway, I really like his performance. I really like their chemistry together. And it is kind of an interesting thing to think about. It'll make your brain hurt if you think about it too much.
That's why I couldn't go down
That
the path of Lydia.
that you think about your life, like I was saying about my family moved to California. I mean, it's just
What
one
if
of
I
those
didn't get
things
my
that changed.
PhD?
It changed everything.
Yeah,
But I don't think everything has that kind of meaning, but everything can have that kind of meaning.
yeah.
So you never know.
Oh my goodness. Got me thinking about my life.
Yeah. So
Making
I do think it's
questioning
underrated. I think it
decisions.
deserves more love than it gets.
Hmm.
And it also has a great soundtrack.
Yes, it
There were a
does.
lot of really good songs in here. Um, and I don't know, I find it a fun, clever, romantic comedy. And I think, again, because Gwyneth Paltrow became kind of uncool because of Goop and, the people, I think a lot of people sort of just dismiss anything she did when I think that this is actually good. And I
Well,
did,
and
Go
I
ahead.
will admit, I did think about. I was like, "Oh, here goes Gwyneth."
Yeah, and her
And
British
her
accent, I'm
goopiness.
sometimes like,
Yeah, the British accent. I was like, when she was talking to Anna, I was like, Anna sounds so natural. Where it's like sometimes Gwyneth Paltrow seems to be fighting with her accent.
yeah, I agree. That was kind of the era of where all the Americans were pretending to be British.
Well,
Like
yeah, she also did it for Shakespeare in Love too, right?
Madonna did it too, where she all of
Oh
a sudden was
gosh,
like British. Like,
gosh, yeah. No,
why are you talking this
that
way?
was interesting.
Okay, I did ask on Twitter what people think of sliding doors and got a lot of responses.
Nice.
I have Kim Pierce says, as a card carrying member of the John Hannah fan club, this movie is foundational for yours truly. We have film critic William Bibiani saying Sliding Doors is a low-key classic. It's not just very good. It's one of those movies that didn't make a ton of money, but had a sizable impact on how future stories got told, to the
Oh,
extent that
interesting.
the Sliding Doors moment is a now standalone term. So it's
Yeah.
something that, and particularly a lot of sitcoms have done a Sliding Doors episode. I remember Frasier in particular did one,
Oh,
Sliding Frasier
Sliding
episode.
Frasier.
Yeah. Mike Gulick, it says, oh, I thought you actually meant actually sliding doors. Didn't realize it was a movie. Never saw it. AJ Curtis says, I like it. John Hannah's performance is what I remember the most. The weaving of realities has a symmetry I appreciate. Jem Macatalo says, loved it when it came out, saw it multiple times, and I am not a Paltrow fan, but loved this. I liked the two stories and thought they did that well.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Stout says, I enjoyed it. I liked the idea and how it was executed. R.L. Saltman says, saw it when it came out, loved it. Doesn't always make sense, but it is well acted and you care about the characters.
Minus Jerry.
Yeah, Rachel McMillan says, one of my favorites since I was a kid. Love the hero. Trivia Chick, she says, adore it. I'm not a romance movie person, really, but it made me feel like maybe there was hope for even someone like me.
Oh.
Then Carlo Movie Loot, he says, I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember being a pleasant surprise. I was expecting a more generic rom-com, and it was a bit more than that.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of comments. The people saying loved it. A lot of people saying never seen it, so you got to check it out. It's a really cute little movie.
I can't believe all those people who said they loved it didn't have nothing to say about Jerry. Come on.
Yeah, Jerry's the worst. We
Jerry
agree on that.
the worst. Oh my god.
Yeah. So there we go. That is Sliding Doors. I mean, using our Crown scale, I would probably give it a 4 out of 5. I really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun.
I would probably do the same. I think it, like I said, I think it gets you thinking about your life and relationships and decisions that you make. And I do like the cross of the stories, but I think we all know how I feel about Jerry. So
yeah,
it might range between 3, 5, and 4 because I just cannot. What is up with this character?
I understand. Well, let us know what you think if you've seen it. What do you think if you're listening, and what rating you would give it, and what you think of brown-haired Helen and blonde-haired Helen
and Jerry. Oh my god,
Jerry. But yeah, let us know, and if there's any other sort of underrated rom-coms that you think might be a fun one for us to talk about, just let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And Alysa, where can people find you?
Yes, I am friends with Alysa, that's my name, all over social media. So on Twitter, I'm friends W Alysa, and that is also my webpage.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And I'll put a link to the playlist for all of our On Friendship episodes. Definitely want to check all of those out. And make sure you check out the Patreon group and merch store. We would really appreciate it. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews to both of our podcasts. That would be amazing. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.